Hello, hello, hello. I am recording this executive roundtable, not exactly what I thought I was going to be doing, but I had some technical difficulties, so I had to improvise. And so that is exactly what I'm doing right now, is improvising. And so here I am, a smart leader who is under pressure to do this live broadcast, and the technology is not working. So obviously, I have created this for myself so that I can literally show you all what to do when we are under pressure. But I tell you, where there is a will, there is a way. And, part of being in leadership and part of being in leadership is that you are going to have situations where things do not go as they are planned, and the pressure will be on to perform. And we have to figure out what to do. So here we are. I am Tracy Knight. I am a one team strategist and an executive leadership coach. I have over 30 years of working with mission driven organizations who I call the impact sector. And I've been working with these organizations, nonprofits, higher ed, government, foundations for well over 30 years of my career, helping them to really turn vision into measurable performance. And it's not lost on me that when I transitioned my career 21 years ago into entrepreneurship, that I would create this very same experience of, yes, I was running organizations before in my career, but then when I became an entrepreneur, man, I know firsthand what it is like to have to make decisions, to have the weight of people holding you accountable and responsible, and wanting to succeed, and knowing that you can't have everything depend on you as you are growing your organization. The organizations have to be built so that they can stand free of you. And it's not that you are not a part of the organization, it's that you are a part of it, not the part. So I am also the creator of the one team approach, which is our signature, not only philosophy, but our approach to building one team. And that is really based in leading with social and emotional intelligence. It's undergirded in the principles of change management and best practices and process improvement, and the integration of AI as a tool for improving the way that we work, but moreover, modernizing our organizations, because God knows that we desperately need that if we're going to stay competitive in the marketplace. So yes, even these organizations, government agencies, nonprofit, higher ed, foundations have to stay competitive in the marketplace, because your relevance is not guaranteed. It just simply is not. Any organization can put themselves out of business if they do not make the turn. Okay. The reality of it is that executives really are facing a new reality. And I don't really think that people understand just what we are facing right now, but it is a new reality. And right now, given the political, social, and economic climate, a lot of leaders are finding themselves managing three timelines simultaneously. One is responding to what is happening right now, meaning when the crisis comes down, the board member comes in, or stakeholders or shareholders come in, and or clients have new demands, new needs. Then what happens is we can't just overlook that. We have to be responsive to that. So that's responding to what's happening right now. But there's also, how do you stay committed to what's in that strategic plan? We've already committed to certain things, certain projects, programs, initiatives. And so how do we continue to carry that even in the face of the crisis? And then finally, great leaders know that you have to be forward thinking, right? You have to have foresight. So being able to really anticipate and plan for, prepare for what is to come to make sure that the organization stay relevant. So one of the things I want to invite you to do, and if I were doing this live, we'd be having conversations about it, but you still can post in the chat, like which one of these is pulling at you the most right now? Is it the current crisis of the day? Because some of us are feeling like every day is bringing a new crisis, right? So you're not alone in that. There are many leaders that feel that way. Secondly, is it the day-to-day operations of carrying what you committed to delivering, but maybe what you committed to delivering is no longer realistic? How about that? So many organizations, even through COVID, committed to new programmatic initiatives, and there may have been funding for that at that time, but now things have changed. Some funding has gone away or it has sunset, and you still have this verbal, maybe even written commitment to deliver on it, but the weight of it is maybe more than what the organization can bear. Or is it the planning for what's next? Like just trying to anticipate, who do we need to be as we move into this next, not 10 years, not 5 years, but the next 3 years? How do we decide who we are going to be? How do we anticipate the needs of our customers, of our clients, and make sure that we are responsive to those needs in a way that is not only thoughtful, but is also futuristic, right? So what I am seeing for a lot of the CEOs and C-suite executives that I work with, my team and I are actually seeing where leaders are starting to revisit a lot of the decisions that they've made. They find themselves reworking a lot of work that maybe has already been done, maybe by other leaders within the organization, or rethinking decisions that have already been made. This is so pivotal for you to really assess this, because smart leaders don't make poor decisions because of a lack of intelligence. It doesn't have anything to do with intelligence. You're in the role because you're intelligent. So this doesn't have anything to do with intelligence, but I'm going to tell you what it does have to do with in just a moment. A lot of times we make poor decisions because pressure is really exposing the gaps. And this is intel that we need. Like, this should not fall on deaf ears, nor should we take this personally. The reality of it is, when the pressure is on, it will expose gaps in our ability to level up and lead with emotional intelligence, because stress management, emotional management, situational awareness, collaborating with a team, all EI competencies, all of them. Or how about this? Being a key influencer, like being able to lead with influence and not domination, EI competence. So, and the thing about EI, emotional intelligence, is not static. It really is not. It fluctuates based on the level of responsibilities you have in the present moment, right? So when this pressure is on, our volatility or risk of making poor decisions, it's heightened if we don't start checking in with our own emotional intelligence. In addition to that, that pressure also reveals our delegation behavior. Like, how willing are you really to be able to delegate to your tier 2? Not just your willingness, but your confidence in it. Your ability not to jump in and take it over. How much are you holding in for yourself and not just giving it out to people? And do people have not only the task, but are empowered with the authority to make the decisions? I was literally meeting with a client a couple of weeks ago, and I'm meeting with executives. These were like executives. And literally, like, I knew I didn't have the CEO, but I had like COO level. And then I had the people who reported into them. And what we were offering really sat in that space of the second tier. That second tier person couldn't make the decision. They were like, even though this sits in my area, like, I don't feel like I don't have the power to make this decision. So then they deferred it to the COO that was on. They were like, I don't really have the power to make this decision. It's got to go all the way up to the CEO. This is what I'm talking about right here. We think we're delegating, but we're not delegating. If everything has to come through you, you have become the bottleneck, period. Okay. So what the poor decisions come in under pressure when we have not truly learned how to delegate. And then finally, if our decision structure is not in place. Okay. So, and we're going to talk more about that because that applies to process. That is relevant to process because sometimes, as I've said to so many organizations, and one of the reasons we started working so much in process improvement is because even if I can get the team on the same page and working together and we've navigated through conflict and everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing, if your process is antiquated, ineffective, or absent, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. Okay. So this is what pressure actually reveals to us. And it's not a bad thing. But what you need to understand is that physiologically, there is also something that is happening to you, which causes executive distortment in their judgment. Physiologically, neurologically, the thinking narrows. When the pressure is on, your thinking narrows. When the pressure is on, the thinking narrows, urgency increases. So in other words, I got to do something. We got to make a decision right now. We got. So now we are not in this calm state where we can make decisions. We are in a state of crisis. And so all sense of not only peace, but all sense of what is reasonable, what is rational. I was literally working with some friends the other week, and they wanted to get these tickets. And, people wanted to, we got the tickets, but then they wanted to switch to a different day. And there was, one person who was so intense around, well, the ticket prices are going up and we got to make a decision right now. And blah, 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 blah. And it's like all the poor decisions that have been made all along the way in the process of getting these tickets was because people were reacting and not responding. They were reacting out of this urgency. And see, you will have some people who will come in and heighten that urgency. You as the leader have to stay in the center of yourself. Because the reality is when you make decisions out of urgency, this is when mistakes happen. This is when risk sensitivity really goes up. And for a lot of leaders, what they'll start to do is tighten up their control. And that's when you start seeing leaders who they become very rigid. They take back things that they delegated out. And that's because they're tightening the controls. They don't have confidence that the team, they'll say they have confidence, but their behavior doesn't support that. Okay. And then finally, emotional reactivity increases. And whether we're talking about those tickets that I just finished talking about, or for some people, the other organization I was talking about, for some people, they just sit and wait. And they're just waiting and waiting and waiting, right? So no movement is really happening. People are busy. They're busy doing busy work every day, but the organization is not moving strategically. And so over time, decision quality actually diminishes. I think the thing, I want to provide some light around this because this is truly an exciting time. It really is. It's an exciting time. I'm so hyped about what is happening. You know that old saying of you can't see the forest for the trees? Well, that is what I think is happening. I know that we have a lot of political uncertainty and unrest. I know we have economic uncertainty and unrest. And we have social uncertainty and unrest. But even in the midst of that, because in the midst of all that uncertainty is change. And you happen to be leading the organization at the right time. This is a paradigm shift that we are going through. You are literally in the forest of the coming out of an industrial age and going into the age of intelligence, the age of knowledge. Yes. And so many people really don't see that you really are shaping the world right now. Think about this for a minute. I put this picture up here because I thought it was so relevant. If you think about it, at one point in the late 1700s, we had the steam engine. So we had steam trains that were moving products across country. And then we evolved into the light bulb, right? This industrial revolution where electricity became accessible and telephones became accessible for people. And people were in the midst of it. And those who had the foresight to see what was going on not only solidified their place in history, they actually grew or stabilized their organizations. And then in the 1980s, the baby boomers came through here and created a digital revolution, right? That's when computers came on the scene. And we are now, because I'm talking to you on a device right now. Where are we right now? We're moving from the industrial revolution into present day, which is moving right on into the era of intelligence. It's where AI, robotics, and so many other things are evolving and will become a daily part of our life. It's already happening. And you have the honor, the pleasure, the responsibility to be leading your organization during that time. And so instead of thinking about this as the next crisis around funding, you need to get ahead of this thing. You need to be the person who is directing where this should go, understanding that we have these circumstances, these variables that we're dealing with, and you do not have to do it alone. That brings me to the need for the evolution in leadership, because during the greatest generation and the baby boomer generation, leadership was really all about the commander commanding what needs to happen, right? It was top down sort of philosophy and approach to leadership. It was very top down. And leadership really commanded rather than earned their place within the organization. In other words, people respected them because of their title. Then you had Gen X. Hello. Gen X come along, and we have had more of this heroic leadership style where we carry a lot of things on our back. And what I mean by that is these are latchkey kids. And so latchkey kids have learned how to get it done now, and get it done without a whole bunch of help. And that works for a period of time. But it also creates burnout, and it doesn't allow you to develop your bench within the organization. And so now, as millennials are starting to take rise within organizational leadership, they just inherently have more of a collaborative spirit. And this does not mean that as a baby boomer or a Gen Xer, you won't be collaborative. I am just lifting up that our approach to leadership needs to evolve if we're going to stay relevant. Because as collaborators in a collaborative style of leadership, you're not only collaborating with each other, and we go from being kind of having very staunch lines between leadership and the tacticians. Those things become very much blurred, right? And the leader themselves, they shift from being unemotional, detached, to really embracing more vulnerability, seeing their team as more of one team, more of a partnership where different people with different skills come to the table to help grow the organization as a collective. So we're less about titles, even though titles will be there, but it's less about the titles and more around the skill set that can be tapped and the expertise that can be utilized. And so this is where we find that leaders start to lead by example, right? And so that is more of what we are starting to cleave to in organizations. It's the reason why I built One Team. But where we are going is being an architect. We are going to be an architect of our organizations, a one team architect. And in this is where AI and robotics become naturally embedded into not only our society, our world, but into our organizations. And this focus really shifts from managing people to leading systems. People will be a part of it because the technology technology is meant to be a tool and not a substitute for human beings. But the boundaries will be very much dynamic, right? And so we will have more system accountability. And we will ensure that organizations remain effective and well positioned by how effective we utilize these tools and we lead from that place. So I'm really wanting you to think about and tap into, let's do a little check-in here. When you think about your organization right now, do you or is there another executive in the organization that pretty much carries most of the decisions? I would say if you carry 50% or more of the decisions within your organization, you are back here on either the commander or the heroic stage of leadership. Yep. Yep. And that'll work for a period of time until it doesn't, because you also have new generations who are coming into the workplace who just will insist upon something different. So we either try to make this turn now, or we seek to make ourselves irrelevant, right? Because we haven't made the turn. This is not an issue of intelligence. It's not even a leadership failure. It's about evolution of our leadership. It's a structural mismatch. That is really what it is. And that's what I want you to think about this as, a structural mismatch. Because the reality of it is, in today's environment, what is required is distributed leadership. We've got to be able to make decisions using intel data in a much faster way, right? And we have to have strong internal systems that support that. So your first kind of check-in and assessment around this is just looking at where decisions really lie and whether or not people are really empowered to make decisions, or is there like kind of a bottleneck? Because I'm doing the same thing in my business. I'm so serious. As I said to you earlier, I recognize that this company right here, InView Solutions, has to be able to stand on its own so I can go and be someplace else doing the things that I love to do. The company has to still be able to run efficiently with both animation, automation, as well. And when I say animation, I do mean my little TK, Coach TK, bot, right? But also with my team, the physical team, the human team that are made up of several just experts in their field. Okay. So I am looking at this even for myself. Okay. So what I want to leave you with for this is, because we're about 22 minutes into the executive roundtable, is I want to give you 4 structural mismatches. As I've said, this is not about a leadership failure. These are structural mismatches. And so I want to give you 4 mismatches, and I want you to know what the challenge is. I want you to know what the signals are so you can look for them. And I also want to talk about the results. So first and foremost, the challenge. You've built success on experience and instinct. This comes from relying on what has worked before. And so many leaders get stuck in this, where we've always done it this way. I literally went to a meeting this morning, and it was a beautiful, like almost like a State of the Union for the organization. And, CEO was sharing, what's going on in this body of work that they are a part of. And then, of course, they had a beautiful panel, of experts, blah, 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 blah. And even though it was a very nice event, it was a great event. But I was thinking about how traditional it is, how traditional it was, and how there was just such an awesome opportunity for next year to create something that is more experiential for their participants, so that people don't just intellectually hear and to try to understand what was going on, but you could immerse them in the experience in some way. And so that brings me to this relying on what's always worked, the galas, the breakfasts, the this, the that. It's nothing wrong with those things, but we also have to continue to evolve. And because people, let me tell you, attention and time are 2 things that are extremely valuable. So you want people to walk away from there really feeling like, or want to come because they feel like it's going to be a phenomenal use of their energy, their time. So the energy being their attention. So the challenge here is A lot of us have built our success on our instincts and on our past experiences. But what it leaves us doing is relying on like a 2019 playbook, but we got 2026 problems. You know what I'm saying? And so the habits that we have are outdated. So I want you to type yes if something that you are using or your team is using within your organization used to work, but now it seems like it's not quite working. And the way you know this is solutions really don't land the same way that they used to. And performance is stalling, or leaders sometimes feel friction and they can't really figure out what. And again, that's why I started focusing on process improvement, because people would call me in because of conflict in the team and they really want to have a one team. But I found out that what was causing a lot of the conflict is the broken process, right? So people, they knew how to get along. They respect each other, but they couldn't figure out that the process was broken, antiquated, or not in place at all. Okay. So this is the first mismatch. And from an emotional intelligence perspective, this has to do with agility and change. So our ability to adapt and pivot when we need to, that is a structural mismatch. The second structural mismatch from an emotional intelligence perspective is emotional regulation. So focusing on the fire of the hour, the crisis, the funder who is calling, or the donor, the client who needs XYZ, the board member, the CEO, the crisis of the moment. So the challenge with that is high volume decisions, constant pressure. So if you are functioning in that quadrant on a regular basis, where you're constantly going from one firefighting effort to the next, that is putting you in a reactionary mode instead of leadership. Yep. I want you to type yes if your day feels like constant decision triage. Right? That right there. Because the result of that is we make short-term decisions, but they dominate the long-term direction. And that's why we can always feel like we're in crisis mode. And the organization doesn't really quite feel like it's staying competitive in the marketplace. And competitive is not about competing with other organizations. Competitive is like maintaining your relevance in the marketplace. Okay. All right. Let's go on to the third structural mismatch. Team collaboration is the emotional intelligence competency that is related to this, but the mismatch is the heroic responsibility burden. So this is when leaders at any level feel like they are the one. The one. This is the time where the one does not work. The one who is responsible for the success or failure of the organization. Because the pivot that we really need to understand is that we need more of an evenly distributed responsibility. The CEO is still going to be the buck is going to stop with them, right? We understand that. But what this is also saying is when you feel that everything begins and ends with you in terms of the success and failure of the organization, it leaves everybody else out. And so what will happen is you'll start to step in more, control increases, and trust and delegation decreases. You also lose trust in your systems, right? The systems that you have built. And you can't rebuild or enhance the systems if you don't test them out, just like with this technology, because I am going to get to the bottom of it, right? So I want you to type yes if things come back to you, even when they shouldn't. Meaning that you think you've delegated it out and somehow it lands back on your desk because you're the one that has the responsibility or the burden of making the decision instead of others being empowered to do that. And the result is ultimately you become the bottleneck. If you're out of the office, you have meetings, you had another you had another project, et cetera, that becomes the shutdown. Okay. So and here's the other thing, the team will shut down too. They will let you make the decisions. And so that creates resentment among other things. So again, I want you to type yes if things are constantly coming back to you. The final mismatch that I want you to be aware of. The emotional intelligence competency is about initiative and bias for action. But it's when, as leaders, we're waiting on the perfect data in order to make a move. We make poor decisions when we're waiting on the perfect data. We're waiting for the right information to come in. Now, caution on this, because we do need we do need information. We need correct information, right? But sometimes people can wait so long that it's like study long, study wrong is really what I'm trying to convey here. The challenge here is that high risk environments trigger the need for certainty. And that's really what is playing out, is when leaders start needing to feel like they are absolutely right. This is absolutely the right thing to do. No, as leaders, the best thing we can do is make the best decision that we can in the present moment. But when pressure is on, a lot of times we think we need more data, more analysis, and that delays decisions. And as a result, we miss out. Timing is off. We lose momentum, and there is a loss of confidence in ourselves and in our team. The team can lose confidence in the leadership and in themselves. When we study too long, we study wrong. Please type yes if decisions are delayed, waiting for more clarity. In other words, we start to procrastinate and we don't take action. Okay? Because we won't ever have all the information. We're just making the best decision that we can, which is what I did today. I was in a crisis. Technology is not working. I was thinking, what can I do? I'm going to record it. I'm going to record it and I'm going to post it. That's the best thing that I can do. Do I love this? No, because I'm not on here live with you. No, I don't like this. However, it's the best decision that I can make given the moment. Okay. All right. Let's keep going. So I wanted to have a moment where we shared our experiences. I would love for you to just send me something in the chat around your experiences, around pressure being on and how it's felt to make some of these decisions under the pressure. Or if you see your team struggling to make decisions under pressure, please do DM me, or you can set up a meeting. I would love to have a conversation with you about it. Here's our next check-in, because I believe in continuing to do litmus tests so that we're not just talking in theory. We actually need to be assessing, because we do need data. We do need data, and we need accurate data. So these little litmus tests throughout today are all about us doing a litmus test. And this one is called the wobble test. And it's 2 parts to the wobble test. So I want to know whether or not your organization is stable or wobbling under certain circumstances. I want you to know whether or not your organization wobbles or is solid under certain circumstances. So here's the question. Of those four, of the 4 mismatches, right? In the structural mismatches, everything we've discussed has to do with either leadership and direction, performance and execution, or the culture is at a place where there is avoidance and maybe possibly anxiety. When I say leadership and direction, that does not mean your leadership is messed up. That's not what that means. Remember, this is just calling out, where do we have an opportunity to level up, to lead differently? Because we're not leading from 1995 or 2005 or even 2015. That's not what we're doing, right? So which zone do you feel most wobble prone to right now? I want you to post that in the chat. Is it the leadership and direction? Is there one of the 4 mismatches? Because some of those fit in one or more of these categories. What about performance and execution? Do you feel like the team is struggling there? Or is it the overall culture where things seem to be intensified anxiety? There's a procrastination, avoidance, kind of going with the status quo, even though we're in a moment where we need to be molding and transforming our organizations, not going with the status quo. So post that. So at this point, what people typically do is they want to know if they are wobbling, whether or not this is temporary or is systemic. What do you think? Because what I know for sure is you need to measure that. You need to assess that. The one of the things that we offer is something called the One Team Strategic Leadership Readiness Inventory. And that inventory helps you do a deep dive into the 7 building blocks of one team to do kind of a wobble test on the organization, on the leadership. Again, we're not talking about leadership being ineffective. We're talking about whether or not we need to level up. Do we need to level up our systems? Do we need to level up our leadership bench? So our One Team Strategic Readiness Inventory is assessing whether or not you're ready to start leading from a strategic place or a reactionary place. Okay. And it's complementary. So you'll hear more about that later. Here's the second part of the wobble test. If you step away for 30 days, for some reason, maybe you went on a vacation, you go on a vacation for 30 days, would your leadership team maintain decision quality or would it wobble? Would the organization continue to lead from a strategic place? Could you entrust that the organization will continue to lead the way in your industry, continue to grow, evolve, carry out all the commitments that you've already committed to and respond to the crisis of the moment and still be futuristic? Would it be able to do that if you stepped away? This is the wobble test because if it's going to wobble, when it wobbles, there will be compounded risk, financial impact, operational slowdown, political risk, talent strain. Your team will feel the strain. And organizationally, this is how we lose momentum. This is it. So I'm really wanting you to kind of check in with yourself to see where you sit with that. This is a great litmus test. And I've got one more litmus test for you. What is one decision, just one decision that you now know, just based on the 4 misalignments, based on the wobble test, based on where all the decisions lie? What's one decision that maybe you've been delaying, avoiding, or maybe just wasn't aware of that you know you need to make and you can commit to making that in the next 7 days? Because it's going to strengthen leadership and direction, performance and execution, or it's going to strengthen the workplace culture. What is that? Post that in the chat. Moreover than posting it in the chat, you need to write it down so that you can start taking action on that. Because coming to the executive roundtables and getting rich information is great, but if you don't ever put that into action, then it's all it is good information. Okay? All right. So we've already decided that smart leaders make poor decisions not because they're unintelligent or even ineffective. What I hope that you have been taking away from this is that this is really a system failure. We're using old systems, processes, leadership strategies that used to work. They used to work. They were very effective. But now we're in 2026 and we've got a different political, social, and economic climate, right? And you must be responsive to that. We are moving from the age of industrial into intelligence. You must make sure that your organization remains relevant as we move forward. Poor decisions under pressure are not about intelligence. They are signals that your leadership and accountability infrastructure is being asked to carry more than what it's built for. That is the essence of it. That's what I want you to take away from here. If this conversation exposes some wobbles, then the next step for you is to get the data and get a strategy in place that is going to move the needle. And that is where I for sure can help you. As I said to you earlier, we have a complimentary strategic readiness inventory, strategic leadership readiness inventory, where we are assessing leadership alignment, decision patterns, delegation behavior, accountability structure, and leadership alignment. I got that on there twice. Scan the QR code in order to take it. It'll take you 3 minutes. I think there's like maybe 20 questions on there. It will take you no time to do this and get the results instantaneously. The other thing that is going to happen, I only do this for people who are absolutely 100% ready, but I am offering 5 free 60-minute executive strategy sessions to not only review your findings, but to also put a strategy in place, a one team strategy. It's next steps on what you need to do next. We're going to explore practical next steps that will help to strengthen your ability to lead and perform like an organization that is moving into the age of intelligence as one team. So just scan the QR code, and from that, you'll begin to take the assessment, and then that will direct you to the application. But I'm only taking 5 people. I'm only taking 5 organizations. So once it's gone, it's gone. So I hope that you will get your application in as soon as possible, and then we'll get you set up in the next 2 weeks, and then we will be able to go from there. So from here, I wanted to ask a bunch of questions, and I still want to ask questions. So if you want, you can just simply DM me your questions or book a call. You can do that from my website, which is tracyknightconsulting.com. And I'm happy to just jump on a call with you and kind of talk through where you and your team are. So I want to close with, when leadership teams operate as one unit, the organization, your organization, will remain relevant, effective, credible, and you will be positioned for what's next. I'm so excited. I'm excited that I was able to record this. I'm so grateful that I was able to record this. It wasn't optimal, but it is a perfect example of what it's like to lead under pressure. You do the next best thing. And that's exactly what I did here. So I would love for us to stay connected. Here's my contact information. So take a screenshot of that. And then finally, I want to invite you to RSVP for the next Executive Roundtable, which is coming up in May. I do Executive Roundtables every month on the last Wednesday of the month at noon. So I hope that I will see you there. If you have any questions, thoughts, comments, or concerns, please do DM me, or like I said, you can also just book a consultation at tracyknightconsulting.com. Until then, I will see you in the next session, and I want to remind you that today is the day that we begin to take back, transform, and win at the game called Life and Leadership. See you soon.